You didn't start. Okay. Well, there you go. Okay, let's go.
The 21st
Time to record.
Rabbi Furst.
Well, thank you, Lou. This is Rabbi Shlomo First. As Lou mentioned, this is our first year in the Yeshiva Tzama Nafshi Yerushalayim care of Zoom. Learning normally Pirkei Avos, but since we're getting so close to Purim, we want to get an understanding of Megillas Esther. So we are now going to return to our Megillah, and we will begin to learn. And we are now in the our document. Let me put that on the screen. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's go now to the third pasuk. Pasuk number Gimel. Gimel. Perek Aleph, pasuk Gimel.
Okay. Bishnas Shalosh, the Malko. At the time of the three kings, or the third year of
in the third year, Lamalcho of the rule, in the third Malchoi, in the third year of his rule, right? In the third year of his rule.
His rule. Lama Asay Ha Mishte.
Oh, from the first, it's worthwhile. Go to the Megillah. You need to read the pasuk in the Megillah first.
Okay, this is Pasuk Gimel.
Yes.
In chapter 1.
Yes.
Oh, Pasuk Gimel, chapter 1, or chapter Gimel. All right. Pasuk Gimel, chapter 1.
This is it. Bishnas Shalosh L'Malcho Asa Mishte Lecho Sarav Vadav Chel Paras Umadai Ha Partumim Bisarei Hamidinos the Fanav. So in the third year of his reign, he made a feast for all his nobles and servants, the army of Persia and Media, the sheiks and the nobles of the lands before him.
In my translation, I've got the nobles and official sheiks, okay, of the provinces being present, not necessarily at the. Does that mean that they were there, or?
Well, what do you mean that they were there?
Does it mean that they were there as well? Or were they just on the sidelines?
Apparently everyone was there. He made the kosar of his ministers, of his servants, Hail Pras, the troops, the army of Pras, Umadai and Madai, Bartuchumim, Lusare and Medina Slefana. All of them were Befana.
Okay.
I think. And,
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's very good. That's very good.
Well, you could ask, when it says Lefanav, is it referring to the lands or is it referring to the people?
Well, I'm not sure if the people were invited. It didn't sound like the people were invited. What does it?
No, it's just a.
Yeah, it does sound like they were invited.
People? The people?
It sounds like an office party.
Not the common people. I'm talking about the nobles and the servants and the army.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. This is all this is an official it was official
Feast.
feast, yes. But really, I mean, you should really know it really is a council of war. You should really know it was a council of war against the Jews. That the
Why would he invite the Jews to a council of war against the Jews?
they weren't invited. Who said they were invited? They're not indeed. Pasuk Gimel doesn't mention anything about the Jews, does it?
Well, all his servants, doesn't that include the Jews?
No, no,
No?
no. I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah.
In the army, there's no Jews in the army?
No, that was that was never since antiquity. Jews never served in the army. That's a modern well, not exactly modern invention, but if you look, I'll just read it to you for a minute. I'll read it to you for a minute, and I'll read you in a minute. One second.
What are you going to read?
Excuse me.
What are you going to read?
I'll read you a quote from the Sefer from Rabbi Victor Miller on the Holocaust. Let's see here.
I can't see it. It's blurred. It's still blurred. It's blurred from your too big. Divine Madness.
That's right.
Read it,
That's
but
right.
your
The,
back blurriness is affecting this too.
well, I can't.
Not a face.
I don't know. Let's see. Does that change anything? We'll have to see. In any event, one second. Oh, says here.
Oh, good morning, Mayor.
Good morning. Good morning. Sorry I'm late.
Here, I'll read. Okay.
We're on Pasuk
This
3,
is,
Mayor,
Okay, thank you.
chapter
Yeah.
1.
And the Rabbi is going to read a quote from a book, Divine Madness, which is with Jews work being in the army, I think.
Oh, ay.
okay, so here this is a chapter. Okay, you don't see it. Anyway, it says here the beginning. This is on page 51 in his Sefer, or the Divine Madness, Rabbi Victor Miller. The beginnings of the Haskalah in Germany. A catastrophe descended upon European Germany from Berlin and Vienna that created a long-lasting destruction on a vast scale. We may put the date of 1783 as the inception of this tragedy. The disloyal element, lured by the forced glow of the Enlightenment and its portent full of equality for Jews, appealed to the Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria to bestow upon his Jews the privilege of enforced military service. This monarch pictured the fawning Jewish writers as liberal who desired to confer upon the Jews equal rights together with all of his citizens, finally granted the decree that Jews should be eligible for compulsory military service. He began to enforce this decree without further delay. No mention of him was made of any of equal rights. He proposed that all Jews in Austria should found secular schools, which is an innovative tragedy which was gladly welcomed by those who wanted to be accepted by the Gentile world. This is the main point here. In all the centuries of exile among the nations, there had been no counterpart to the crushing blow of conscription to the army. In all the misfortunes that Israel encountered in the lands of their dispersion, the Jews had never been compelled to be subservient to military men. Because of the united prayers of the entire nation and the indefatigable perseverance in the intervention with its authorities, the calamity had been avoided. This, along with the arrogance of the nobility, would not allow them to serve together with the despised Jews. In the last days of old, the Torah reigned supreme. The leaders of the nations, the Jewish nation, negotiated with the gentle rules everywhere to attempt and exempt the Jews from military service, and they were successful. He quotes here he's quoting now Josephus. He's quoting Josephus here, okay, from his book Antiquities, book number 14, chapter 10, number 12. The ambassador of Hyrcanus, the son of Alexander, the high priest and the enarch of the Jews, appeared before me to show that his countrymen could not go into their armies, for they are not allowed to bear arms or to travel on the Sabbath day, nor will they be able to procure for themselves the sorts of foods that they have been long used to eating from the times of their forefathers. I therefore grant them freedom from going into the army. However, the disloyal elements had become voted. Now Rabbi Miller continues, right? However, now the disloyal elements had become vocal and elevated themselves as spokesmen for the Jews, and thus they brought the catastrophe upon their people. For the first time in Europe, Jews were impressed into the army, and they profaned the Shabbos, defiled themselves with unclean food, underwent other degradations, and engaged in practices that were alien to the Jewish principles and practices of the Jewish national attitudes. The Austrian Jews feared this as a fearsome misfortune, and fast days and precious prayers were held for its deliverance. Okay, continues on. So you see, the Jews were never, right, expected to serve in foreign armies. So now there were no this first feast of we're discussing here in the third pasuk of the first chapter. There were no Jews there, and as a matter of fact, the whole point of the Mishnah was, as I said, a war council. It was a war council, a council of war against the Jews. They were planning and plotting how to do away with the perceived enemies, Achashverosh's perceived enemies. Because again, Achashverosh is representative of Tuma, right? Of Tuma, and Klal Yisrael is representative of Kedusha, and the two cannot exist. So Achashverosh felt very strongly that the Jewish presence, existence, in fact, was a very undesirable threat to his kingdom.
And this was even before Haman.
This is quite years. This is years before Haman, as it mentions here. If you look at the psukim, right? This is in the third year of his reign, right? The third year of his reign. Now remember, the Megillah started off in the days of Achashverosh, which is a general, as we learned, is a general classification of the time of Achashverosh's rule, right? So, and then in the second pasuk it says Biyamim Hahem, in those days, right? He now set up his throne in Shushan. So the first thing was, the first pasuk tells you in the time of Achashverosh that Achashverosh was the one who he ruled, right, from Hodwal Kush, right? And then the second pasuk tells you that in the time he came and he set up his throne in Shushan Abira. And then in the third year of his rule, that's the third pasuk we're dealing with now. In the third year of his rule, he now made a royal feast in which he invited all the dignitaries and officials of the various different kingdoms that he ruled over. Right. And as we learned in in our document, right? So this was he was making he understood from this time in the third year of his rule, he understood this was the time when the Jews should have been redeemed from their 70 years of gullus, of exile. And since they weren't, he felt that was a simon, an indication that his rule would now be permanent without any interference from the Jews, and therefore he was now beginning to plot what to do with the Jews. Right. Okay. So let's go to our document. You see where it says Siman Gimel, Gimel over there, Shnash Shlosh Lamalkoi?
Yep.
Okay, let's take a look at that.
Lama asa hamishta. Why did he make the feast? The fee shiyom genisaso haya. Because it was a day of genisaso is separation.
No, Genisa. So this is based on the Gemara in Avodah Zorah. I'll tell you where it is in a moment. If you want, then you can write it down and reference it for yourselves. The Gemara in Avodah Zorah speaks about various days of Avodah Zorah that the Goyim would keep regularly for various different reasons. So one of them is what they call is referred to as the Yom Genisosai, and that is it's here in the 1 second. Baby, Memorials. Yeah, 1 second. The first Pierke of Zorah, I did think it's not Ches, Summit Olive. Yeah. Mm,
סליחה שאני מפריע ללמוד, אני לא יודע מתי לעבוד, תמיד
Right, 1 second.
שאלה קטנה.
כן, כן.
אתם שכנים של בן דוד?
בן דוד?
כן. באיזה בניין?
איזה בניין זה?
אני לא יודע, 21.
זה סמך מול סופר, כן.
יש להם בחור, אתם מכירים את הבחור עם בשידוכים, הבחור? מי יכול להכיר פה מהישיבה? מי גר בבניין או...
כן, כן, רגע.
Sai lang yung
Ulaya, Ulaya, Michoil. אפשר לקיים, הוא הולך על
כן.
אבא שלו, תשאל אבא שלו, תשאל, מספר אבא, אולי הם התפללו ביחד, אולי יש לו, כן, אולי, אצלו. Sorry, okay, so Yom Genisaso, Yom Genisaso is the day that they take rule, all right? Learn that to take rule, and
Rule, R-U-L-E?
yes,
What does that mean to take rule?
Maybe when it begins his
become-
kingship.
they become powerful. They become powerful. Whether through force or fiction, but that's a very happy day for the kings when they take rule. That you find it on Daf Ches Amud Aleph in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Yom Genisaso.
Okay.
Why did he make the Mishnah? Because that was the day he took rule. He consolidated his rule.
Okay, so he made the reason he made the feast was because this was the day that he took rule. V'shaleach igaros l'chol sharei hamidyanos al sheva esrim umea midinos, and he sent letters to all the nobles of the land of the 27 and 100 provinces. Shiavo'u atofim levanim v'ho shiven b'mitvas zahav v'kesef. That he came, or he went what is atofim?
Mishiviu otim levenim otvim levenim shivu otvim levenim. He brought let's see, I'm not sure. Otifim levonim otifim. Shivu otifim. Not sure. Let's see, what could that be? Otifim. Let's take a look. Hold on. See, look it up. Otifim. I think yeah, the Sheviu Otifim Levenim they were brought in. They were enwrapped in levanim, and levanim is a type of usually flax. No. Excuse me. No, 1 second. Yeah, I think flax. I think flax. They were otifim. They were dressed in flax. They were dressed in flax, and which was a like special dress clothes. Mitos, and they would be resting upon the couches of gold and silver. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go back now. 1 second. Hold on. Let me just check here. Okay. Let's go to the next pasuk.
Haroso, Harayoso, as
Sorry, is that on the screen?
No, we were looking in the Megillah now.
Oh, sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, I was reading on the book. Okay, so this is pasuk 4. Bahar Oso S O Sher Kavod Malchuso the S Yikar Tif Eres Gedulaso Yamim Rabim Shemonim Umeat Yom. And he showed them
In order to show, right? Not in order. This is order in order to show him.
in order to show them the glorious wealth of his kingdom and the majesty and splendor, the great majesty and splendor many days. 180 days.
Okay, you should according to the Gemara, you might want to mark this down. According to the Gemara Megillah, right, that he wanted to show the Tiferes Kudulosoi, right? Tiferes Kuduloso. If you look if you have your Chumash, you have a Chumash this week's Parsha, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this week's Parsha. I'll tell you where it is. It's in Perek Chav Ches. Chav Ches Pasuk Beis.
You shall make garments of sanctity for Aaron your brother, for glory and for splendor.
Kavod Sephoris, right? So Kavod Sephoris. So since it's mentioned the same expression, right? The Rose says Oisher Kavod Malchoi, Ves Yakar Tiferes, Kudulosoi, Yamim Rabim Shmona Yamim Yomecha. Then it says it mentions Kavod Malchusoi, Tiferes Gudlosoi. So the Gemara in Megillah, right? The Gemara in Megillah says that you learn from this that he was wearing the Big Day Kahuna.
Right.
So he wasn't just interested in showing off his personal wealth or the wealth of his kingdom. He was showing that now these things Hashem have become obsolete. Don't forget, Achashverosh, he was the one who suspended the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. He, according to his calculations, understood wrongly, but he understood, according to his calculations, that the time for the redemption of the 70 years Golus of Klal Yisrael was past, and therefore he understood wrongly that they would never now be redeemed. And so therefore he wrongly understood that he had the possession and control to all the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, including the Big Day Kahuna. So he was showing off the Big Day Kahuna. So don't think it was just showing off how wealthy he was and how his kavana was something else. His intention was to show that now the time for his rule, meaning the rule of Tuma, will now become permanent, has shown. And the only thing they had to decide was what should we now do with the Jews? What was their big concern about what to do with the Jews? Is, well, the Jews haven't been redeemed. Their prophets said they would be redeemed after 70 years. 70 years has now come and gone, right? So apparently the Jews are not going to be redeemed. So now what are we going to do with the Jews? That was the big question. What should we do with the Jews? Okay.
I don't understand why he says the Jews were not redeemed. I mean, we were redeemed. We defeated our enemies, and why doesn't he view that as a redemption?
Why? We were still in Gullus. We were deeply in Gullus at this point. When did we defeat our enemies?
In the war of Purim.
This is years before. This is 10 years before that. This is why were you? Achashverosh wasn't a prophet. He didn't see the future that we would defeat Haman.
I see.
Right? At this point in history, the Jews have not been redeemed, right? And now the question is, what are we going to do with these Jews?
Okay, I got you.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Let's go back. Let's now go to the next pasuk. That would bring us to pasuk hey, fifth pasuk.
Uvim los ha yamim ha'ela asa hamelech l'chol ha'am ha-nimtzaim b'Shushan habira l'migalos al katan mishter shiv'as yamim b'chatzar ginas Bitain Hamelech. Let's see, it says when it was over. What's it refer?
Right. I mean, after the 180 days, we just got the last pasuk told us that there was the first feast that lasted 180 days, and now with the end of those 180 days, now this took place. Agav, you should realize, during that 180 days, you don't hear anything from Vashti, right? Vashti's sort of on the sidelines, whatever she's doing, she's knitting the royal socks, taking care of the royal cooking, whatever she's doing, right? 180 days, you don't hear a word of about Vashti, right?
Mm.
Oh, so now what happened now again? So again, in the Melus HaMayamim Ha'ela, so at the end of these days, Asa, go ahead, Asa HaMelech L'Kol Ha'am, right? So now this is a public feast. Now the 180 days was a private royal feast,
Ah,
only for the officers, only for the officers and the nobles, right?
now it's for everybody.
Yes.
For all,
It could be
all
the
the people in Shushan.
specifically the people in Shushan, which was basically now. Don't forget there were many Jewish people throughout Persia and Babylon at the time. They weren't simply not all the Jews were located in Shushan, right? And and so one of the big questions is asked is, well, if the Jews in Shushan did something wrong, that they went to the Mishnah and they shouldn't have gone to the Mishnah. So what did the rest of the Jews do wrong that they should have been involved in the sin of the Jews of Shushan? That's a question we'll have to ask and hopefully deal with it at length at another time. But so now this second feast is specifically for the people who were there in Shushan, and now it was made bechatzer ginas beisan hamela. It was in the chutzner of the king's garden, right? Now, where did the first Mishnah take place? That's not told. We're not told about that, right?
Mm. So we sort of assume it was inside his palace, one of the
What
halls.
the could be again. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. Uh, I imagine. I'm not sure. I don't know. I tell you the truth. I don't know which one was bigger in terms of how many people came. Because in the first one, you have all the nobles, all the officers, all the Chel Pras, the army was involved, right? They invited the army, right?
Mm.
So, and then it was just the second Mishnah was just the Jews located in, not just, I assume, not the people that were located in Shushan. Whether the first one was bigger or the second was bigger, I don't know. Um, let's see if I can find that out.
There's a lot of references about where people lived here.
Yeah, what do you mean? Go ahead.
But the footnote here says Shushan, the capital. This was the palace compound. This is where he sat in his royal. This was to Posuk 2. Shushan, the capital. This was a palace compound which was surrounded by the less fortified Ir Shushan, the residential part of Shushan, where the Jews lived. The capital was separated from the city by a river. Many citizens, including Mordechai, see chapter 2, Posuk 5, as well as the king and his officers, lived in the capital. See Ibn Ezra on 8:15 and 9:12, Manos Alevi on 8:14-15, Rav Yonasan Ibershutz on 4:17, Malbim on 9:13, and Torah Tamina on 4:17.
Right. That's yeah, that's classic. That's classic ancient construction that usually there was a river. Most settlements and then villages, cities would usually be established upon a river for various reasons. There would be commerce, there would be a water supply, there would be other things that were available that the river would supply. So many of the main establishments were on the river, and usually the capital would be on one side of the river in a more protected location than the rest of the city, which would sometimes be on the opposite side of the river. You see that if you look at how cities and settlements were established, that's usually the classic formation of how they established the settlements. Yeah, so I'm not sure. It's not clear to me which one would be more um, uh, populated, the first party or the second. They do, the Mefarshim, the Gemaras, the Madrashim do speak about that it's mentioned here, Chatzar and Gina. Chatzar is something which is bifnim. The Chatzar is on the inside and the Gina is on the outside.
The hotter I know hotter. What's the other word you said?
Gina.
The Medina.
It's Chatzar and Gina. And there happens to be a machlokus, which is on the inside, which is on the outside. There are different days in which is more protected, the Chatzar or the Gina.
Well, by definition, a hotter is inside.
Yeah, but you have a Gina. A Gina many times they have. You've probably seen buildings where they have gardens on the inside of the
Walls.
buildings. Yeah, in inner walls, and usually the chutzner is usually, the outside entrance. That's the beginning of the outside entrance. But there's a machlokas about that. Yeah. Okay, let's see Pasuk Vav. Okay. Uh, According to Rashi says Ginas is the Makim Zroini Yerakos, where they would plant vegetables. And Beisan is Natias, where they would plant trees. Okay, Rashi's learning that like that there. If you want to mark down this, what I've been saying here, that yeah, that Alshik mentions that they were developing plans on how to entice the Jews into sinning. Right. The plan was to entice the Jews into sinning. Okay. Actually, maybe it's a good time to stop. Let's that well let's see, which pasuk did we leave off on exactly? Let's make a note. Although we just did. Yeah, we're about to do pasuk vav. Okay, good. So let's pick up pasuk vav tomorrow.
Okay.
In the meantime, we shall take a little break. Roy, please have a good afternoon. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Quite
Rabbi.
welcome. Okay, we'll see you all soon and in a few minutes, Mitzvah Shem with the Shir Mishnah Brewer.